This week on Overtime, we talk about what it means to be generous with our time, talent, and treasure. I'm joined with three extraordinary guys that I love. Make sure you like, subscribe. Let's get it. Welcome to Center City Overtime, a weekly podcast where we take a couple minutes to just really go through and revisit Sunday morning. And this week, I'm super excited because we got an all-star cast. First, before we go any further, normally, I'm joined by Pastor Ashley Kramer, who this week is celebrating because she is graduating with a master's degree. So, yeah, that's
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
She's currently in Seattle. They had all kind of horrible trip getting up there and delays and all that stuff because I really do feel God is saying she needs to come back. Seattle's not that good.
Indeed.
Anyway, no, I'm just kidding. I love Seattle, but we want Ashley back. So today we get a chance to spend a little time talking through generosity. We've been walking through this MOVE series. So we've kind of put some people together today that I really admire. These men have played different roles within the context of the church. Two of them serve as current stewards of the church, and then the other one, we just think he's a cool guy. And we found them walking around, so I asked him if he wanted to do it. Just kidding. So what we're going to do real quick is we're going to go around the couch and give everybody a chance to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start on the far right with a returning,
alumni.
Think of that, officially you get recurring character credits on the podcast.
The greatest talent. I am an alumni.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell people a little bit about who you are?
Jabbar Jameson, lover of God, married to a beautiful woman who might be out there in the audience right now, father of three beautiful children, and just love everything finance related, and looking forward to the conversation.
Give us just a quick 25-second rundown of what you do day to day.
My day-to-day consists of helping individuals really manage their finances from the standpoint of 5 major areas: cash flow, debt management, risk management, which is your insurances, your life insurance, disability insurance, property and casualty insurance, and then investment management, which everybody loves to talk about. I mean, that's the thing that everybody thinks advisors talk about is investments, but it's only 1 in 5. And then lastly, estate planning, making sure that your legacy is intact through documentation, legal documentation, and pass to the next generation. So just surrounding those 5 areas, making sure people are just have sound planning from a standpoint of navigating what their goals are.
That's awesome. Sitting next to him on the couch this week, my man Derek Whitmire. Just tell a little bit to people who you are and kind of what you do day to day.
Sure. Yeah. We really are at the bottom of the barrel. If you're getting to me, we need to grow this church, seriously.
Love it.
Yeah, Derek Whitmire, lover of Jesus, lover of my wife who's here, and my 2 little girls, and by trade, certified financial planner at a massive firm that I think the way to differentiate Jabbar and myself is he's an entrepreneur. I make a salary and do a lot of what he does at large scale for households. And I really enjoy not just the investment piece and the financial planning that clients really kind of want to jump right into and think we can wave our magic wand and be a prophet and just make all their financial dreams come true. But what I enjoy about it is getting to know people and understanding what they value and trying to problem solve and kind of illuminate how to get where it is that they're trying to be. And to be really honest, like the last 2 series, the identity thing, what we're going through right now, it's there's a lot of overlap. So I guess I kind of see why you invited me up here, but it's all a little nerve-wracking too when you're talking about generosity. Okay, I hope I'm not being, this could be bad or good while I'm being invited, but there is a lot of overlap in finances and the way we think about it and our faith.
I love it. Derek Whitmire also has the best golf game in the church, I think.
Again, we need to grow this church, man.
Oh man, and a blessing to my life and the life of my wife. All three of these men and their families have unique stories of what brought them to Center City. But one of the unique things is that for the most part, we all, I want to say within 6 months, have all kind of come together, and our exposure to Center City was all within 6 months of each other. Since day one, John, you and Marcia have been just a blessing, not just to me and Jess, but to our staff as a whole. We really do, and this is probably walking down away from the message a little bit, but one of the highlights of my season here at Center City has been hanging out with you and Marcia and our team around your couch and having you speak such encouragement to us. Both times we did that were really timely. So tell us a little bit about you and kind of what you do and what maybe brings you to the couch.
So Derek, it's a big barrel, let me just say. And so it means both of us can be scraped from the bottom. I'm the opposite of a financial planner. John Galden, by training and my day job, I'm an architect. And my role really is helping clients figure out the hard problems. And I'm the kid in the room that's always asking, why are you doing it this way? Can we do it another way? Have you thought about this? I'm that guy. So when these two guys describe themselves as lifelong lovers of Jesus, I would probably describe myself as a lifelong learner of Jesus. And that's my joy, is just learning new things and new experiences and meeting people. If you hang out with me at all, you're going to find out I'm going to ask you about your story. I really love, I collect stories. Somebody told me that once. That's part of your gift, is just collecting people's stories. Because I find there's just such beauty, and I'm totally attracted by beauty, which explains my wife, so yes.
I wonder what she's attracted to.
Well, I can't help it. Bottom of the barrel.
I'm just kidding, man. I love all three of these guys. We've been blessed to do life together for the last 5 years in one way or another, and I count it an honor that you guys are with us this afternoon, or whenever you're watching this online. But this week we did have the chance to talk through generosity, just to kind of so that we have a framework for the conversation, because I always think that's important. We took a look at John chapter 6, where Jesus is in this moment, this miraculous multiplication of 5 loaves and 5 fish. And really what we tried to do was showcase the difference between scarcity and generosity. That for so many people, generosity is this thing that we all kind of would universally agree is a good thing, but scarcity often will keep us from that. And when we talk about the context of the church, it's generosity that kind of moves the engine of the church forward. Now, it's quick, and I think it's important even in this conversation to say we are not just talking about finances. If people aren't generous with their time and their gifts, the church ceases to move. But we are also talking about finances, because if people aren't generous in their finances, it's tough for the church to do what it's called to do. My first question, how does generosity affect people's finances? Again, at least the two of you on this side, because of the nature of what you do, I know that you've had those conversations from time to time. How have you seen that decision? We're going to try to live generously. How have you seen that affect the way that people live financially?
You passed off already?
I wrote some stuff down.
Well, from a generosity standpoint, I usually don't get into that conversation very early with people. I listen to them, to John's point. I try to see who they are through what they tell me, as opposed to jumping right in. And learning about people, it gives them an opportunity just to divulge more about the true essence of themselves. And therefore, you can see how they approach the conversation of generosity, of giving. not just to the church too, just giving in general.
Yeah.
And I know specifically we're here at the church, but giving needs to be a habit. And it needs to be a habit that's actually worked. And it's hard for some people. Some people, just have a it's all mine mentality. And so if you see that early on, you have to break through that. And it's nothing wrong with it. It's just something to work through like any other area of finance. And so, but from the people who do kind of display that, I immediately relate and I see it. And I can speak to them from a different standpoint. So I never want to assume anything in the field that I'm in as to why people do or don't. But in understanding who they are, just kind of have a discussion around that point.
It's good.
Yeah. You definitely can't bring up, how much you're giving or give the implication that you should be giving more and jump right to that. But I think that one of the comments that you made in the sermon Sunday that really struck a chord with me is when people, I'm going to mess it up, and I wrote it down too, but something about chaos. If you don't have versus rhythm.
Yeah.
And so many people that we talk to, you get under the hood and you realize this is chaos. So you're never going to get to generosity until you have some structure and you understand where things are going. And the only way I know to do that is to measure. We got to measure where is everything going. And
So for a moment, speak to that, because I do think that for most people, measuring's scary.
yeah,
And measuring requires the type of work that a lot of people are not willing to do. What do you do to overcome some of that fear that you sense in clients or even in your own life? It doesn't just have to be clients. You're not up here just because of what you do 9 to 5. But what do you do to help people overcome? No, we have to measure this to get out of this mess.
I've found that, it's not scary to me to dive in there. Obviously, I've been doing it a long time, but also it's equal percentage of the time that you think people find out they're not in as bad a shape as they thought. So that scarcity mindset, which it's funny that that's so close to scared, because that's what it is. We're lacking faith there. And a lot of the times, we're on much more solid footing than we feel. So that's exciting to me. I love to tell that message. But if it turns out to be the other, well, that's serious business. We want to take that seriously too and figure out what steps that we need to take to get on solid footing. And, the conversation about generosity will come, but that's the exciting part, is because we can get there. We can all get there. We got to get order and structure first.
And I start introducing just a baseline question, and audience participation. Don't tell me numbers, just raise your hand. How many people can tell me how much money they made last year? Raise your hand. All right, pretty good. How many people can tell me how much they're worth? Fewer hands, right? Fewer hands. So by introducing numbers to the conversation in a very just open way, it allows us to break into the conversation a little bit more deeply, not feeling ashamed that you don't know what you're worth or what the meaning behind it of what it is, but understanding there's a dichotomy that the world doesn't talk about. Income is good, wealth is better. And so while we're trying to learn that aspect of it, it just opens it up to measurement. I didn't know that about wealth, so let me tell you a little bit more.
It's good.
So by opening the door just a little bit to a conversation in a very just laid back way, people are just more willing to give you information about who they are and what they are.
I promise this isn't all going to be about finance, but
Good.
I think it's a good. I think it's a good place to. I think it's a good place to start. I love this one. You might be a regular. We might get John on.
Probably not.
I love it. So in this conversation, the conversation Sunday, we mentioned tithing as this tool that sets rhythm for us. Malachi 3 is the passage we read over and over again whenever we talk about tithing. But within the context of Scripture, what we find is this idea of first fruit. When we consider the Lord's tithe, the phrase I always use with people is, you can't tithe without knowing what's happening in your finances. Like, it requires you, even that simple concept, 10% of what? So you have to do the work to at least understand or get a generalized picture of what's happening within the scope of your finances. And it is a tool by which I believe the Lord provides for his body to say, okay, this is how we set a rhythm. Because again, every rhythm requires direction, specifically at the beginning of any music piece. That rhythm is critical. But one of the things I think that hit a lot of people Sunday, based off of just feedback I've got, it's not just tithing, but even this conversation about our time.
Sure.
So what are some of the practical ways, John, that you've been able to set good quality time, not just giving God our leftovers, but giving that the best part of who we are?
Okay, yes. Let's step back half a step, though.
We'll do whatever you want. You are running the show.
I told you I'm that guy. For me, tithe and generosity are, tithe is just a piece of generosity. To me, generosity is a heart issue, and it shows up in so many ways. And to me, generosity is not an option. It's not like in some of the previous sermons that you preached, like, you could be this evangelist gift. This is that gift. To me, generosity is universal for every Christian. If you understand what Christ did for you and the price he paid for you, you don't have a choice. You're called to be generous because that's the definition. I mean, that's just your obligation to live out that life in serving and worshiping Christ. So I guess I start from a different point. I don't start with the tithe piece and think, okay, I have to give this much. I made this much, therefore I have to give this much. I think about it differently. It's really an opportunity to give the tithe. To me, and I'm at a different stage of life than most of you in the room, so I get that. But for me, the generosity piece is pushing myself, and I told you I'm a learner, and I always don't want to just say, hey, I set that pattern, that behavior back when I was a young Christian in my 30s, and this is what I do, right? This is how I define generosity, and this is how I define my tithe back to my master. My take on it is, I need to be open and willing.
Let's go.
To push even further into that as I grow in my understanding of Christ. And that may mean more money. It may mean more time. It may mean putting myself in awkward, uncomfortable situations that put me outside of me. And that's hard, and that's challenging. But it's one that I think I shared with you guys the last time the stewards met. It's something that God was working on me about, not just getting comfortable in whatever baseline I had set as my definition of my gift to my Lord.
Yeah. I've this conversation, whenever we talk finances within the constructs of the church, people kind of tighten up. And I understand that. There's been a lot of abuse within this space. And yet, I do feel like it is within it is within our responsibility as a church community to faithfully communicate what the Scripture speaks when it comes to finances. Yeah. There is so much written about money and our approach to money and where it sits, right? It's stuff that we could all recite even now, like the root of, money is the root of all evil, and it's actually not what it says, right? The love of money is the root of all evil. We can give you example of Jesus dealing with money, like give to Caesar what's Caesar's, and the moment where the fish come out miraculous with money in its mouth. I've been fishing ever since, and I just not seen the same thing. I do think it is a topic that needs to be addressed by churches, but from the approach of there is a healthy perspective to finances that we find within the Word of Scripture that gives us the ability to navigate from a place. I think the abuses fall on both sides. You have the poverty mindset that says, I'm going to suffer for the sake of the cross, so I'm going to live on nothing. There's no drive. There's no determination to make any kind of income, and I'm just going to suffer. And then there's the flip side that says, if I just say it, somehow it's okay to go into debt for a Mercedes, right? Like, so on both ends of those spectrums, you have such bad theology, and yet in the middle, if we can just figure out a biblical perspective to finances, it not only creates health within our home, I believe it creates health within our minds. It creates health within our body. Anxiety around finances, you guys deal with this all the time. The anxiety around finances has so many people crippled that if the church doesn't speak about it, who's going to speak about it? Like, where are they going to find that? I'm really trying hard to not make this all about finances, but I do think that that's the question that a lot of people are struggling with. Here's just a couple things before we move into, I think, some areas where time is an issue. Number one, I am a huge believer to invite professionals into the conversation when it comes to your personal finances. What I mean by that is there's some smarter people than you that can help you develop budgeting structures, that can help you determine what worth is, to help you for your next level investment. If you want to live on the same stage as John, you want to get some really smart, you said different stage. I like that stage. I want to be on that stage. But if you want to, you invite people who know more than you to step into that conversation, whether it's professionals or just people that you really trust, to help develop that sense in you. And then the second thing I do, to your point, I know people will be quick, and I can see the YouTube comments already. This isn't biblical. We need to go back to the early church. Well, if you want to go back to the early church, they actually sold everything, and they brought everything into the storehouse. So they weren't quivering over percentages. They were like, just take it all. And I'm sure, that wouldn't be popular in 2024. But again, I think at the core of it, if you struggle with generosity, oftentimes the issue is scarcity. I don't have enough time.
Yeah. Okay, so I would frame it slightly differently.
That's why
I'm not
you're
trying to
here.
be humorous. It's just how I think. I think generosity requires you to step outside of yourself, right? And so much of our culture says it's about me. And it's that scarcity thing. I have got to put food on the table. I'm so worried about all these things. And not that any of those are not legitimate, right? But generosity says, I'm part of a community. There are others around me. And quit looking at yourself.
Yeah.
I love that. You could even throw the word attention. All these things that are supposedly finite, but like you said, in the hands of Christ are infinite if we hand it over. Whew, that gets me. It gets me because it really is true. You can apply it to literally anything. And one of the things that people seem to be obsessed over lately is attention. And me, like you're saying, John. It's all about me. How many people are paying attention to me? And one of the things I love about this wonderful little church of ours is look at how much sharing goes on.
Yep.
Sharing of attention.
Yeah.
We have these wonderful, talented people that we get to listen to week in, week out, and they share the attention. They share everything. Wow. It's beautiful.
It is. Community. Yeah.
I'm pretty good with finances. I'm not good with my time. John, you mentioned saying no in your sermon, and I'm a no ninja. I'm just like, I protect my life. And one of the conversations that I had with John at, where did we eat at? It was a
The-
barbecue space.
Yeah, the barbecue space in Plaza Midwood.
Midwood Smokehouse.
Midwood Smokehouse.
Yes.
Yeah. Love those wings.
It was good.
Those
yeah.
wings. Sorry.
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 It was 2 years ago almost.
Yep.
And I was talking to you about my time and coming to the church and teaching about financial stewardship. And I was nervous about it because this is my peaceful place. And I don't want to be talking about that because that's my profession. And you made it okay, but it still took me 2 years
Yeah.
to even come forward and be like, okay, now it's time. Now I have a comfort level with it. Because that time aspect with 3 children, a wife, a business, meeting payroll, all that stuff, I mean, that just takes a different type of mentality. And with that, again, the gym, my neighborhood, and the church are my peaceful places. And so opening that up and giving up my time, to your point, John, being more generous because it's a needed conversation in the church. And shame on me for not wanting to be comfortable and not giving of something that I've been blessed to get. And so with that, again, the money is the easy part for me. The time is where I need to take and make and work at it to make sure I'm giving to the right people. But also with no, anything that you say yes to, you're saying no to something else automatically.
Absolutely.
And so protecting that aspect of my time because I don't want to say yes to the wrong things, meaning that I have to say no to some of the right things in my life as well.
You know, it's funny because the phrase I get over and over again is, "I know you're busy, Pastor Jon. I know you're busy, Pastor Jon." And I was literally the other day I was convicted because someone says, "I know you're busy. I know you're busy," and I'm like, "What am I saying that's making people think I'm so busy?" I mean, like me and Joel can have a 20-minute conversation about the 2 hours of wrestling we watched that week. I can't be that busy. like there is a point where I think there is a sense of busyness. And I also know that I'm sitting up here with 3 highly motivated, I'm sure you guys are constantly. So this may not be the couch to have this conversation with, but there are people who are watching, maybe even people who are amening me in the crowd here, that there's almost this perspective of busyness. But if I looked on how much time you spend on TikTok, I'm not sure it would communicate a sense of busyness as much as I'm just filling time and somehow thinking that's important.
So that's happened to me as well. And I've debated this and asked people, okay, what is it? Is there a sign somewhere that says, you're busy, leave me alone? And I do think that we project,
I agree.
How we feel about things. The human race, we're super good at reading someone's face. We're super good to tell if they're really genuinely interested or they're just kind of listening, right? And my wife, again, is super good about teaching and helping me understand what does active listening really look like?
Yeah.
And how do you really give somebody your attention and how, again, that's that stepping outside of yourself, that generosity. And I tell you, this is one of my areas I struggle with. I just do. But I'm called to change. I'm called to try it differently. Get up the next day and try it again and see if I can make a difference. So.
And again, I know that you're probably maybe watching this thinking, what does this have to do with generosity? I do think that that's a part of it. I have noticed, to your point, one of the things I'm trying to do is just walk slower. Sounds crazy, but I think as you walk through a room, the speed by which you walk communicates how much time you got. So people, I know you're busy. I'm like, I'm not busy. I'm moving. But there is times where I do think, again, that scarcity mindset, I'm not sure I have the time to sit down and have this conversation. And this is not true of everybody. There's some people who have every regimen and moment of their day scheduled. So if that's you, this isn't you. But I do think that that's what the call of the church is collectively, that we do notice. We do notice and spend time with the broken and the hurting. There's a phrase that was made popular in church circles several years ago with the just breaking down of a couple ministries, and there's this idea that it was okay to build a church even if it meant you had to run over people to do it. And what it told me was the church was too busy to people. They were too busy to care. And it's been it just shook me. I remember sitting down and watching this whole thing about this and reading through some stuff and calling some friends of mine and being like, may it never be said of us. May it never be said of a church that people walk in and we're just too busy doing that we don't spend time loving and showcasing the hope and purpose that Christ has for them. So a couple questions because they're pouring in. Well, pouring is exaggerating. They're trickling in. Slow trickle. It's drizzling. I'm not sure there's actually any.
It's a mist.
It's a mist. It's misting right now. It's misting right now. But any encouragements or practical advice for someone who's inherited a scarcity mindset? I do think that this is important, and here's why. I do think that we can inherit scarcity as a mindset, specifically within the context of the home we were brought up in,
Absolutely.
the culture we were brought up in. I know for seasons, like my mom saved Tupperware from like the Cool Whip thing.
Yep.
Like we're living in a generation separated from that where we don't have to do that, but we carry some of that from that generation that we were kind of brought into. What do you do when people have been brought into the scarcity mindset? How do you help them navigate away from that?
Well, first you look in the mirror because you'll find that, that's the thing I love about Christ is he teaches us things if we'll just ask, right, to kind of give us instruction about, how can I do this better? How can I do it a different way? What can I learn this day that I can help, the people around me? And starting that way, I think, really helps you kind of push into that a bit because none of us are perfect.
No.
None of us have it all together, and we need each other. And so that idea of scarcity, yes, I think if you listen to everyone's story in this room, there's probably some elements of scarcity that you came into your relationship with Christ about, right? So there are always things to give up. It's if you understand how attractive generosity is, then maybe it'll help undo some of the kind of mindset, the kind of stumbling blocks of scarcity. It's hard. Some people, particularly with money, I'm sure you guys see it, but particularly with money, it's really hard. Like, no, but I have to put away X number of dollars for the next 20 years. I have to do this. And some of that's generational. Some of it is cultural.
Absolutely.
I see it and absolutely understand it with Black families that are trying to build generational wealth. They've never had it, and they're trying to build that for their kids. So what's wrong with that? From my point of view, that's amazing.
Absolutely.
Right? Go do that. And it makes me incredibly sad to think that you're having your whole world and your whole mind is so focused on that it's all you can think about.
Yeah.
I get it. And I didn't come from money at all, but money's never been important to me. Sorry, guys. It's not. It's not.
Favorite kind of client.
But I have always, since I became a Christian, had a faith in God that God's going to take care of me. Taking care of me doesn't mean I'm going to end up wealthy and be able to, give all this money to my kids and stuff. Taking care of me, often in my mind and my relationship with God, money doesn't really come into that for me. I'm different. I get it. Sorry. But, that the whole thing around where you come from, what your heritage is, what your culture is, God knows those things, when he called you to himself. And so we each have these places that you got to work at. It's not just you became a Christian and suddenly, there's a rainbow,
Yeah.
No, you really have to work at it. And that idea of just constantly being in prayer, just as Paul said, there's a reason for that. We don't get it right by ourselves.
Yeah.
No.
And,
We just don't. We
No.
need community.
and working off that, because you said you have to work at it. And John, you mentioned it in your sermon, get the disciples' name, who said how instead of how are we going to do this, focusing on a problem as
Yeah.
opposed to just focusing on the abundance thereof. And it's through repetition. I mean, reinforcing through conversations, continued repetition. And Jesus did that with the disciples continually. It was always repetitive learning and building them up for when he was gone. Similar to finances, it's a learning and building up until you no longer making income. And I tell people all the time, from a financial perspective, one, it's getting a little bit beyond the scope of this, but America has kind of sold us a lie. Retirement is a luxury product, and everybody can't afford it, but everybody wants to do it. And so there has to be some type of discipline in that. And so now, from that scarcity mindset, not understanding where it comes from, but then two, connecting that type of mindset to what your ultimate goals are. And unless you can get from underneath yourself to really realize what I have to do and what I have to be disciplined with, you'll never get there. So it's just wiring the brain to say, hey, this is what needs to be done. If you work at it, this is what will happen. I show you the results. It happens. You're reinforced. Now you're changing the way that you think, and it's showing in your action. So just that constant reinforcement of
Yeah.
activity.
It's good. It's good.
That, amen all day to that word retirement. We stare at it all day, every day at work, and people, fantasize about it. And it is kind of a bill of goods in a way. And that reminded me, if you guys haven't started that book that we were generously given last week, start it. I read the first little story or first chapter in there, and so impactful. I may not have to read the rest now, but really quick, because it's so tied in here, and really it's kind of another application of generosity. I've been a perpetual C student my whole life and always stared at that cruise control button for life. Like, when do I get to hit it? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? And somehow, find myself running laps around where coaches and teachers and oftentimes my parents thought that I would end up. And the story in the first few pages is about this guy that goes and plays golf. So I was attention right there with the pastor, and he's like, hey man, we're at this exclusive club. I've done incredibly well financially. Why keep doing this, right? Am I good? He was asking for permission in a way to hang it up and cruise. And he said, what if I did that, basically? Like, all the, people that I've been able to impact as a Christian author and a pastor, what do you think God would say when I have the chance to meet him? He was like, oh, good luck, and he says, well, he might say the same thing to you. Like, you have these gifts and these talents that have bestowed blessings upon you. Who are you to say when it's time to hang it up? You still have work to do. So that, again, resonated hard, because I stare at that cruise control button all the time, and I'm looking everywhere for, can we hit it now? Are we done yet? When do we get to, I find time to play a fair amount of golf. I don't need to. I probably would hate it. And we talk to people, that retire, and kind of their life starts to crumble. They quote unquote retire. They haven't planned out what next, and they handed over their passion and their gifts. And in a way, you used the word Sunday, like hoarding. In a way, like, we can hoard money, we can hoard resources, we can hoard our gifts and talents too.
I love that. Yeah.
So I love that. If anybody reads the rest of the book, tell me about it. I might read it.
For reference, the name of that book is X, multiplying something or another. But I think that just the name of the book is X. There's just so much. There's so much to this idea. And again, we got another question coming in because it's misting. What would you give? What advice would you give to newer adults, newer young people who are adulting now? That word, I love that word. And how to use money wisely, tithing, giving to the church. I'll take the tithing conversation just to alleviate that for now. What advice do you give to young people who are trying to figure out how to set up a life where their time, their gifts, and their finances are utilized for the sake of the kingdom of God, that they do kind of honor that generosity that you were talking about? What do you say to the 20-something in the room that's maybe trying to figure this out? What advice would you give them?
Why'd you look at me?
I'm looking at all of you. I'm looking at all of you. I'm looking at all of you.
One, I will say a kingdom mindset. We don't understand what a kingdom is. And I said that last time on the couch.
Yeah.
In there. We understand what a kingdom is, that all your energy and actions are directed to the resources of the kingdom. It starts to change your mentality. So this isn't good advice, but this is kingdom advice. This is biblical advice, right? Here in America, we want our kids gone out the house at age 18. It doesn't say that in the Bible. In fact, people live with their parents up until they're married. And so we have this thought process where, one, we're in a dual income society.
Wait. They don't leave at 18? What? Jess, we're going to have a conversation in the church. I don't know if I can do it. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. My bad.
It's
Sorry.
a
I'm not kicking mine out. I don't know what Nan will say about that, but I don't want to kick mine out. They're gone. They got to go.
Nan's doing... No. Nan's kicking them out. Sorry. Go ahead.
I can't go now.
No, it's perfect. I completely agree with you. There is a lot of cultural tension that says somehow 18-year-olds who haven't formulated fully yet are supposed to go from 17-year-old to 18-year-old who can now choose a president, choose a career, choose to get into $85,000 worth of debt to pursue a career that they have to choose before they step out of their last semester of high school.
Yeah.
And there's some definite, I'm going to use a strong word here, but there's some ignorance to that
Yes.
that I think we've just swallowed hook, line, and sinker culturally.
Well,
Exactly.
I think the world is set up, too, to take advantage.
Let's go.
It is really true. And so if that 18-year-old didn't come up in a household that kind of talked about money and trained with money and gradually kind of increased the amount of responsibility for that, young adult, then they're kind of left to their own devices. And here we are again talking about individuals rather than community, and they can really fall prey. The enemy can really then rack up a lot of debt. Oh, it's a credit card. I can just keep using it, right? Just here.
Yeah, and I do think that some of this, again, is cultural, right? Like, if there's not this is why I'm committed. So we say it here at Center City. We speak about finances twice a year. I'm going to stop saying that because we don't just speak about finances twice a year. Jabbar is speaking about finances every Sunday for a semester. We're going to talk more about financial literacy because I do think it's a ploy of the enemy to make this an issue that the church can't talk about. So it's time to grab back our birthright and say, no, there's a biblical way of considering finances and do the work of training and teaching, because ultimately that's what benefits the body collectively. We expand the kingdom of God when people have a good sense of how to navigate their finances, their times, and their gifting.
So let me just pick up.
Yeah,
and just,
I was about to say,
'cause I'm not laughing anymore. You don't get me started again. I can't stop.
We're over here sweating now, talking about debt. And go ahead.
But the dual income society that we kind of live in now, for that young person coming out, don't be scared to have roommates. It's power in the fact of collective, to John's point. It's being together more, you get to pool your resources more. And in that, you get to stabilize yourself to a place of release. Now you have a launching pad. but roommates, just doing things smarter. I've had 2 cards since I graduated in 2004, none of which cost above $20,000. 2 cars. Don't go buy a $35,000, $40,000 car with a $700 monthly payment. There's just wants that you don't actually, that are going to get you into trouble. And taking a step back to actually examine what you want your life to be from a long-term standpoint, instead of being short-sighted and looking a certain way, you'll start to make better decisions and reinforce that by being around people who have made smarter decisions to guide you accordingly.
I would add one more thing to that. I think sometimes there's a stigma around money, that we as, a society can talk about a lot of other issues, but people are very reticent and withhold information about their money and their finances or the struggles they're having.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at the number 1 or 2 kind of problems in a marriage, often finances is right at the top.
They'd rather talk about, statistically, death or even sex. Well, probably sex goes at the top, but these are things people don't want to talk about. I probably shouldn't even have said that. Edit that out. But money is the most terrifying of all the terrifying things to talk about.
Yeah. So getting rid of that stigma so that we can all say, we don't have this together, right? Because they put us up here on the sofa doesn't mean that we got it all worked out, right?
No,
So
I think that's good.
It's just that, we're better together. If we can share what we know and what we're doing, and you guys can say to the people you're connected with, I need help, right? That's amazing. That's breaking through kind of the enemy's stratagem to kind of keep us separated, keep it hidden and out of the light.
I do, the only practical advice that I normally give young adults is be okay with your journey looking different. I remember
Different than
anybody else around you.
Oh, not the generation before.
No,
but
but even that. So there's
Sure.
a good example. My dad, who I love to death, when we first got married, it was a different financial market, totally different financial market.
Yeah.
1999, little different. We bought a $74,000 condo that my mortgage payment was nothing. Like it was a couple $100 a month. At that point, for the sake of the conversation, I was making $60,000 right out of college, making good money, had no prior debt. This was not even it didn't even register on the scale of a bad decision. This was great. My dad, being from the generation before, realized that, listen, John, you're gonna buy this house, you're gonna live in it for 19 years, and it's gonna depreciate. Because that's what he was accustomed to. 2008, from 2019 to 2008, I bought 3 houses, and not one time did I sell those for less than double what I bought it for because of the market and the reality of the market. Now here's what happened. Then the bubble broke and I lost all that money on the last house I bought. But I say that to say, often what ends up happening is if you live with your eyes around you instead of your eyes on your bank account, what will end up happening is you become slave to the pressure of, well, my friend who's got married the same time I do and has 2 kids, and we have 2 kids, and they bought a house. Now we need to buy a house. You may not be in the financial place to buy a house.
Yep.
I think what everybody wants is when we talk about finances, they want just give me the 10 things, but you know that those 10 things are unique to a lot of individuals. Now again, there's principles that we can all adapt and grab a hold of. But the execution of those principles, a lot of times, are dependent on who they are, the stage of life. We use a phrase here within the context of even budgeting where we act our stage and our wage. I'm not trying to spend like I am bigger than what we are. I'm also not trying to spend like we're smaller than what we are. We have to consider who we are, what's happening around us, and how to be wise there. And I think for 20-year-olds in the room, 30-year-olds in the room, there is such a pressure. Such a pressure. I got to dress like they dress, go to this. I remember when I was in my first year of college, I went to a 2-year associate's degree in computer graphics and design. And so I left high school and all my friends went to work and they were making $15 an hour, maybe $20 an hour, some of the big rollers. And I remember for that first semester of high school, we would go out on Fridays and these guys were like hanging out and they're buying these big plates of food. And I'm like, can I get a toothpick and some water? And it got to a point that I had to say no because they were going to movies or going to a football game or going to a basketball game. And I'm saying no because I ain't got my bank account is saying negative 20. The difference is when I graduated college, my first job out of college, I was making more money than any of them. And I remember I rubbed it in so hard. It was such a bad look. I brought them all out to dinner. We all went out to dinner together. We're all eating. I didn't tell them I was paying for it. Right at the end, I got to say, I'm paying for it. They all got so mad. It's like, why didn't you tell us that at the beginning? Because you're a bunch of punks. But again, if you figure out how to be content with what God is doing in you, it'll protect you from trying to live like other people.
Amen.
Now, let me just pause for a moment and give my quick 2 cents on how to begin this tithing journey, because a lot of people are trying to figure that out. Start where you can. Don't allow the way of condemnation, because there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus.
Yeah.
Start where you can. If it's 2%, let it be 2%. If it's 3%, let it be 3%. If it's 5%, let it be 5%. The exercise, though, is making sure you've done the work to know what your finances look like. And I believe that God will be honored in that process. That's just a little practical side note.
By the way, a stat that I'm always astonished by, it's somewhat heartbreaking, but the average American household gives to qualified charities and churches between 1% and 2%. That's good enough to make us one of, and sometimes the most generous country in the world. But start somewhere.
Absolutely.
And never stop challenging that. That's something that we try to do, and we've come a long ways, but we're never going to get there.
Yeah. So this has been, I think, informative in so many ways, and I hope inspiring to some people who maybe be walking through some of these questions about generosity. As we kind of wrap up our time, I want to kind of throw a curveball here. You like that? So we've been talking about finances. We've been talking about time. We haven't talked a lot about talent, giftings. So for a moment, I know all three of you have kind of been here long enough to hear my spiel and to kind of walk through next steps and figure out what giftings look like. How do you feel like you've been gifted, and how are you using that gift to expand the kingdom of God? Go. Anybody can go first. I'm not looking at
How much time do you have?
Well, I mean, we got about 5 minutes, a quarter of the clock, but you know what? We can do whatever you want. It's your world, John. We're just living in it.
This is one it's not that I wrestle with, but it shows up in a variety of ways. I have a whole group of people that I know really well. And I told you earlier that I like people's stories. And because I'm in business and I meet a lot of people, and in my role, I'm part of kind of winning of the work. Okay, so I'm out in public a lot, and I'm out with people a lot. I'm listening to their stories, and it becomes a place where I get to know them really well more. And one of my things is that I want a relationship with someone before we ever do business, and so that then ultimately gives me a chance to share my story as well. And so it gives me a chance to kind of get connected to people that are in all different kinds of crazy places, right? And I love it. I love it. It is a real joy for me to actually help people. That I love. And because I have unique gifts that are, and we all do, by the way, but gifts of visualizing space, visualizing problems, and working through things, then it's a joy for me to give that to other people that are around me.
I love that.
So
I love that. What about you guys?
Go ahead, Derek. You got this one.
It's a little awkward to do this with my wife here. Let's see. Let's start with what I don't do well: cooking, cleaning, saying things the right way. Right? But I don't know. I actually. Okay. This could go on for a while.
Laundry just in case the YouTube audience didn't catch that. I love it.
I identify with John's summation there about yourself, and that's why I like what I do. I would say being an intense feeler of other people's energy and emotion, I kind of take that on. It can be a gift and a curse, but when I'm doing it well, I can pick up on things, and I can use that in trying to help them in the way that my profession requires it. So I really enjoy, I used to try to be this life of the party, and probably was starved for attention a little bit. Thankfully, that was before phones were on cameras. Cameras were on phones. So made it through that, and now I found out I'm actually like an introvert that wants to have coffee and wants to have a phone call with somebody and talk about what's going on with them and learn their story. And so that's a gift. So let's give me that, hopefully.
I love it. Good job.
I love, and I have to go deeper into it, John, what you stated in your sermon. I think it was your last sermon, but it might have been the one before that, regarding that even though we're talking about our gifts and talents, there's multiple places in the Bible that goes into more depth, that breaks it out even more into gifts and talents. So I'm a giver, and I tell my clients, if it comes up that I'm wealthier than most of them, and it's not because I have more money than them, I have enough. And when I come from that standpoint of not needing more, not wanting more, then all the excess can be given. And so sometimes I'm too generous, and somebody graduates college or graduates or this gift, man has to reel me back in. I'm grateful for my darling. She reels me back in. But I love to just give finances because, one, again, I have enough, but then two, it opens a conversation and makes people more comfortable with talking to you about finances.
Yeah.
So the space of generosity comes with being content. And because we content and because we live our lives the right way from a financial perspective, when we got married, I used to have weekly conversations with Nan about money, and she hated me for it. We don't do that anymore.
It's date night, girl. Let's break out that budget. You know what time it is. How's that utilities line looking?
Friday night. Let's talk. But we've done life in a way that allows us to be generous and allows me to be a little bit more generous than I probably should be. But I love to give because people do need finances, and to give somebody something and they say, oh my goodness, I needed this at just the right time. It's nothing better.
Yeah. You guys are a gift to me. I know I said that at the beginning, but I can't overstate that. I know that there's a lot of horror stories about how ministry can be lonely. This is not one of those stories. You guys have been a blessing to me personally. And I know you've blessed so many people in our congregation. Even the way, I don't want to make you guys blush, but I can walk through the conversations I've had with other people about how my parents love your class. That's not me getting emotional. That's just lack of water.
The class is good. The class is good. Go ahead and get emotional.
My parents love your class. And I don't know if it's because of the Bojangles, but there's times where I go to my parents' house and they talk more about your class than my sermon. I get a little offended. Oops. But they love your class, and so much of that is because of the time and attention you've given to them. I love that. Derek, I got a chance to play basketball with Malik the other day. You're inspiring to me.
In basketball?
What, he talked about me?
Yeah. The way that you love those kids, man, the way that you and your wife have sacrificed the way that you do for the sake of that family, it's a blessing. And John, I love your wife. She's our prayer cornerstone. She's our prayer cornerstone. But what I've loved about you is you have always brought such sound wisdom into every conversation we have. And John is one of those gangsters. He could care less what you think.
That's true.
Which you need.
Superpower.
You need people like that. So I appreciate and love you guys. So my question is, where are we going next? That's a great question. So normally Ashley asks that of me. Our next week, this Sunday coming up, we talk about moving to the rescue. There's just some strong language in Scripture about what all this means, right? So if we collectively are to use our gifts to fill the entire universe with Jesus, and the way those gifts move, like what the energy that moves us is this engine of generosity, then what are we moving to? And that's to the rescue of the wandering and the broken. And this message in particular is one that I can preach this. I've been able to preach this sermon since I was 17, just because I was wandering, I was broken. Someone spent 20 minutes of their day to reach out to me. That is enough for me that this is my heart for every and anyone, that somebody would reach out and find and spend the time to rescue the wandering and the broken. And it's also Water Baptism Sunday, which is one of my favorite Sundays. Right now we got one person ready to go, but I don't care. We will fill tanks. We will get it ready for one person, because that's what it's about, man. It's just that visual representation of inward change. If you want to get baptized and you're in this room, or you're a part of Center City, you're watching this, it's not too late. Come ready. We got everything you need. It's going to be amazing. We cannot wait to see you Sunday 9 and 11 o'clock here at 2225 Freedom Drive. Let's make it happen.
I like that.
I said 5, not fry. Y'all trying to make me say 5. I said 2225. Check the tape. And if I didn't say it, edit that out. No, I'm just kidding. We'll see y'all next week.